So we've talked about some of the approaches that you've been applying at top companies like Spotify, Netflix, DoorDash, some of the most competitive companies to get into for any kind of role, you know, whether it's data science or software engineering or marketing or even probably people working in legal, HR. Those are probably some of the companies that people most want to get into. What kinds of tricks do you have for our listeners to get hired by these top firms?
Yeah, I have so many. So I would say I'll kind of talk through all the tricks that I used. So when I was like trying to get into DoorDash, there's a technique I learned back then called the briefcase technique, which I think actually still works. And I've talked about this on a number of podcasts, but basically the idea is that like the core principle of getting a job, right? It's not like interviewing. It's actually, can you add value and solve that company's problems, right? So when an interview is just a way to kind of test your skill set to see if you can actually solve their problems. But in reality, you can actually just circumvent this and actually see if you can solve their problems. So an example is actually at DoorDash. What I did was I figured out what their biggest pain points were. And then I like put together a doc outlining, hey, these are your problems. This is how I would solve it. And I like, it was pretty detailed. I spent at least like a couple days on it. And then you send it to the hiring manager, and sometimes it'll hit. It's not always going to hit, but you have a reasonable shot for it to hit. And if it does hit, then they'll actually be much more sold on saying, hey, okay, like this person has the skill set that could solve my problem. I'll bring them in again to like have a conversation with them. So I found that technique to work pretty well
Do you mind if I interrupt you for one quick sec on this one, on that first point there? Yeah. Something that's interesting today is, you know, so you started working at DoorDash like more than 5 years ago, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
And so back then, obviously, we didn't have generative models that could be creating. So if somebody gets an email from you that's like, these are your pain points, and you clearly spend a lot of time, a couple of days. This is quite an unusual email to get probably for a hiring manager. And that's part of what makes it such a great tool for getting hired. Yeah. But I wonder if today a hiring manager might say, this is definitely Gen AI. You know, and it's almost, there's kind of like it's almost like the more effort you put into it, the more crisp and perfect it looks. They might say, maybe they're more likely to say this is something that was just created by Gen AI. Yeah. This person doesn't, like, they're just, you know, they've figured out some relatively simple agentic workflow to be like spamming tons of hiring managers with these like what look like very complex reports. Because I get that, you know, for the podcast, for example, or for my consulting business for Y Carrot, I end up getting these like huge PDFs, like 30-page PDFs with illustrations, tons of detail. But I get them like, you know, once a week for each business from some different random person who's just doing a cold outreach. And I'm like, this is definitely some agentic thing going on.
Yeah, I see. So yeah, I guess like it's an interesting point because back then it definitely would have worked. I think today, I still don't think people are doing it as much for like these big companies. Definitely for you, it's like you have an audience, so people are gonna reach out.
And it's a different kind of thing. Like I'm getting sales pitches.
Yeah, I see.
So I think that it could be something very different. Maybe nobody is. I mean, because I haven't been getting those at all. You know, people reach out and say, you know, are you doing any hiring? And it's a relatively simple message. Nobody has been sending me these big like, these are your pain points. This is how my data science expertise, this relevant experience I have could be useful. So maybe you're right. Maybe it would stand out anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I do agree that for the Gen AI piece, it's like you can easily spam that for sure. I think the hard part is still like you want it to hit. Like if you have a Gen AI, because I think a lot of times, even if I do this, like if somebody does it to me, if they didn't actually understand my problems, then it's not really gonna hit. Then I'm gonna ignore it. But then if they actually said, hey, like I listened to all your podcasts and I figured out, hey, your podcast is maybe kind of like, you know, you could use this kind of software. I don't know, like you can like improve this aspect of it, and they like, and it was like very specific, and it was clear that they understood what you needed. Then it would hit a lot better. But
here's the magic button you press to 10x your audience and revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's also, so I do think that was one trick like that worked back then. I haven't tried it recently because I don't think I need to as much these days, because I think as you get more experience, it's easier to get your foot in the door.
Sure.
But I would say my recent job at Netflix, the way I got it actually wasn't through applying or using any kind of tactic. It was basically because I had been working in ads at Spotify. I was working in forecasting. So I had this like unique intersection of skills in ads and forecasting at Spotify. And then when Netflix decided to start doing ads, they needed forecasting is essential to running an ads business. They needed somebody with that exact experience and that exact overlap in skill set. So then I was like basically the perfect candidate. And then I when I interviewed, it was like, pretty like I've been like thinking about this stuff for the last like few years. So it was pretty smooth. But I had been rejected multiple times before at Netflix.
You had been?
I had been.
Oh,
yeah. So I think that the key thing is like you have to just keep trying even if you get rejected. And then also too, it's like, do you have a unique intersection of skills that is hard for the person to hire for? Because I think there's many people that will do forecasting. There's many people that do ads, but there's a lot fewer people that do both. So I do think that as people like develop their careers, it is good to build some sort of niche expertise in an overlap of say industries and skill sets. And that's actually what really like differentiates yourself from the rest of the market.